think we're going live now. Make sure this is a thing. I think yep, we are live now. So good stuff. Welcome everybody to the. We had a couple technical difficulties. I'm using Zoom for the first time, trying to see how that will pan out because I think it's a little bit better than Discord for audio quality and all that fun stuff. So bear with us. Today we have Justin. Wait, there we go. I had to point the right way. Here to discuss his lovely Cornscalas, and you can see them in frame of him on either side. He has his finished ones off to his right, and the ones that he built more recently to left. Too late, Elric. I'm paying attention to the chat. But Justin, take it away. So we have Justin from ampsandsound, and he's gonna. I'm just gonna interject here and there as questions come up. But this is kind of more just to kind of highlight what the Cornscalas that Justin's built and give you guys an idea of the cost and value. And we have a PDF as well that I can I'm gonna be putting into. I think I can share it via the description, but I'm not sure. So I might put it into Discord and maybe on the forum for headphones if I can't put it into the description here in this video. So keep aware of that. And Justin, take it away. All you, my man.
Klipsch speakers. I've been a member of the Klipsch forum, for as long as I've been an audiophile practically. If you guys want to search me, see the things that I've built over years, just search Justin S. Weber on the Klipsch forum, and you'll see a lot of things that I've done over that, breadth and time. So what is a Klipsch Cornwall and why build a Cornscala? So a Cornwall is one of Klipsch's heritage products, which means it's been built it was designed by Paul Klipsch and built by the company for 40 years, maybe thereabouts. It is, to my thinking, one of the quintessential American speakers, quintessential American sound. Mm-hmm. So if you think Altec Lansing, JBL, Klipsch, all of them have direct radiating 15-inch woofers very often and horns. So the American sound, to my perspective, is always a direct radiating woofer and horns, in that horns give scale and woofers, direct radiating woofers like here, give us the chest thumping sound that we all want. Whether it goes deep or not, we want to feel it nonetheless. So the Klipsch La Scala and Klipsch K horn are folded horns, and they're very fast, they're taut, they're also very polite. And so when I think of a La Scala or a K horn, it is to some degree a more European voiced speaker. It's polite, it's controlled, it is not raucous, typically. And they're also difficult and cumbersome to build. You need special jigs to get the miter cuts correct, and building to get the compound angles needed to build the horn geometry correctly. Whereas a Cornwall is just a square box, rectangular box. Mm-hmm. It's very easy to build. So the Klipsch Cornwall is a rather big speaker. We'll have it in the PDF. It's 6.5 cubic feet big, which means it's 35 inches tall, 25 inches wide, 16 inches deep. It's a huge, huge speaker. I didn't cuss, if you guys noticed. I'm going to try not to. Because of its size and the woofer it uses, its bass is plentiful but flabby, most people would say. Everybody who's had a Klipsch Cornwall, from a Cornwall 1 to a Cornwall 3, The bass was not as taut as one would want, but it was voluminous.
Mhm.
Um, what we've done in this cabinet is shrunk it by 30%. So instead of the cabinet being 6.5 cubic feet, it's 4 cubic feet. So instead of it being 35 inches tall, it's 30 inches tall. And instead of it being 25 inches wide, it's 20 inches wide. So in so doing, you actually make the back pressure on the woofer uh, more appropriate. The bass is more linear. It goes deeper. And you get a better speaker out of it. So size isn't always everything. So back to the Klipsch Cornwall versus La Scala question. The Cornwall had horns that go down to about 700 hertz, 600 or 700 hertz. I guess it's 600 hertz. They used the same driver as the La Scala and K horn, which crossed over at 400 hertz. The lower crossover points are generally considered a better idea. So the Cornwall had the big thunderous 15-inch woofer, but had subpar horns. Thus, the Cornscala was the idea of melding the horns originally from a La Scala with the direct radiating woofer of the Cornwall and the easier to build cabinet. What that idea has morphed into in the last 25 years is both the Cornwall 4 is essentially a Cornscala, and the idea that you take the very best horns, very best compression drivers that you can, and you stuff them into the smallest cabinet you can get with a 15-inch direct radiating woofer. Thus, again, the Cornscala we have here. Tyler, any questions I could start answering for people, or do you want me to just keep pushing?
I think for this one, let's keep kind of going over like what what got you to this, like what brought you to this being the thing that you went like, this is it, and this is what I want to build, and this is, and then from there into customizing and really making it your own as well, like the bringing it in and customizing it and making it the way it is now comparative to the Klipsch stuff.
Sure. So why a Cornscala, I guess, is one of the best first questions. I, as a younger audiophile, Andy can attest to, couldn't afford really lovely gear, but was willing to build it. And if you build tube electronics and keep your power demand, don't want to build overly powerful tube amps, you can build them at modest prices and get exceptionally good performance. And so that's where I started out as a hobbyist and as an audiophile. So the Cornwall and most Klipsch heritage products are exceptionally efficient. Some speaker manufacturers overstate the efficiency of their speaker. Klipsch, in general doesn't. So this woofer is 98 dB efficient, which means this speaker is 98 dB efficient. So for 1 watt of energy, you're going to get 98 decibels of sound pressure. That's more than you normally listen to music at. Most people are not listening at 98 decibels. Unless they're trying to piss people off or enjoy the loudness of things. From my perspective, at least. So if you have a 5-watt single-ended amp like I build for my headphone amps, or you have a 15-watt tube amplifier like a Dynaco ST35, which is one of my favorite amps of all time, you have a fantastic sounding system. The Dynaco ST35 was called the poor man's Macintosh 275. Mac 275, in modern day dollars is a $6,000, $6,800 amp. What was that? $600 to $800 back in the 60s, where a Dynaco ST35 was a $65 amp. It was much more accessible and was a really lovely sounding amplifier. 15 to 17 watts is more power than you ever need for these kinds of speakers. So what's the point? If you have a Nelson Pass amp camp amp that you've bought off of DIY Audio and you built, which puts out 5 to 8 watts, and then if you buy a second one, it's now a 15-watt amplifier, that's a Nelson Pass design, you have a fantastic sounding system. You buy from DIY Audio the Pass F6 kit, and you build it and you have a 25-watt single-ended no feedback solid state amp. Fantastic. You buy any Dynaco kits, you buy anything from Ampsandsound, it's going to power it. And it's going to power it exceptionally well. So you don't need a 100-watt tube amp or a 200-watt solid state amp to make you feel like you can fill a house and have a dance party and have all the tone and texture that you want. So that's why efficiency matters. From my perspective, Altec Lansing and JBL got out of the game of building this kind of speaker in the mid 70s to early 80s. These used to be stage monitor size speakers. Klipsch, for the most part, was much more domestically friendly. They were not always a pro audio company at the same level that Lansing and JBL were, as far as units sold and whatnot. So the Cornwall ended up in people's homes more often than the JBL did. But JBL was really famous for having awesome bass and big horns. JBL believed in big horns more than Klipsch did. And so the Cornscala is sort of mirroring that same idea again. Big horn, little cabinet, big woofer. Super efficient, and you don't need big power. That said, you need quiet amplification, you need wide bandwidth amplification, and you need something with tone. If your amps have no soul, they're going to hurt your ears with horn-loaded speakers. So that's sort of the punchline of the why.
Okay. And so with that, then, what brought you to start actually like bringing the dimensions down and starting to tweak and play? I mean, outside of just because you can. I mean, that's most people do.
So why make it smaller? So I started, I've owned Maggies before, not cat friendly. Magnapans are not cat friendly, and I have cats.
It's just a giant scratching post, right? I mean, I thought that's what those were for.
Well, and they just, I had MMGs, and they required monstrous power, even though they were small Maggies. I started building Cornscalas after reading the Klipsch forum, and then there's Bob Kreitz is really famous and a great resource. So if you look up Bob Kreitz, builds kits and sells kits for people for these kinds of speakers, but they're based off of the stock Klipsch size factors. So the basic math typically for this woofer is 2 feet cubed. That's the basic math. So that's what a La Scala bass bin is. Okay. This same woofer is used by Klipsch in their La Scala, in their K-horn, and in their Cornwall, and then used to be in what they called their bells. So Klipsch was really good about platform sharing. Their mid-range, they'd use different mid-horns, but the mid-range driver was the same mid-range driver, and it was actually the same tweeter. So the cabinet changed, the crossover changed, and the horn changed, but not the actual driver components changed. So Andy can tell you, but one of the first cabinets I built was 2 foot cubed, and it was just a bass bin for the woofers. And I wanted very much to have like the Rock of Gibraltar, and so I made it 1.5 inches thick on all dimensions. So the cabinets were double layered, three-quarter ply and braced, and I think they each weighed like 150 pounds, 200 pounds. And I had them on a riser, and they were super cool. They were also the size of refrigerators. They were heavy and stupidly large. And my wife was a really kind, understanding person, young in our marriage.
Yeah.
But they were big. I mean, think 2 feet cubed with sidewalls that are 1.5 inches thick. They were just, and I moved these things around on my own. And it just didn't make sense. I think I had built that pair for our wedding, like to put in the reception of our wedding, and then I got a pair of La Scala Industrials and just refinished them and put them for the wedding. I used to think that having a separate bass bin was what I wanted to do, in that the separate bass bin allowed me to change my horns, and it's when I had explored a lot of different horn options. And for that reason, a separate bass bin is really helpful, because then the base of your system, the woofer and the geometry and port calculations are correct for the start of your system.
Mhm.
But if you have a life, a family, an audiophile that changes things constantly, or you don't like dust on things like I don't, having your crossover exposed and all
Bad
the
idea.
wiring exposed is a rather unfinished look, and it always looks like you're a tinkerer and not enjoying actually listening to music. I am a tinkerer, but I also enjoy listening to music. Um, so eventually I came around to the idea of uh, separate a top hat and a bass bin like this the Klipsch did for their industrial Scalas. And
Mhm.
then I started coming around to the idea, much like I do with my amplifiers, that like I don't rebuild amplifiers. If we make a change, we make a new amplifier. We don't tweak it. You
And
know,
then
we don't we don't
slowly.
we don't tweak we don't tweak platforms. Like, when it's done, it's done.
That's that.
When
That's
it
the
when it's
standard.
done and finished and tested, it is as it is intended to be and doesn't come back for slight tweaks.
Mhm.
Because it was a full-fledged concept and idea that was executed upon. And I think the same way about speakers. I would rather build another speaker and try a new idea than tear apart a speaker, goof up the finishing,
Yeah.
maybe breaks. I break lots of things. I'll end up breaking something again. Uh, you know, and so I think that having a fully conceptualized idea is always really important. I live in Southern California. My wife and my family is very understanding about me having lots of speakers, but having exposed horns is a no go anymore. And having really exceedingly large speakers is not accepted anymore either. I built a set of what are called Klipsch Jubilees, which is
Mhm.
two 12-inch woofers. So it's like a Klipsch K horn,
Mhm.
but about a foot and a half wider.
Oh wow. That's,
It's
it's a
huge.
massive
It's
thing.
it's 4 feet wide by 4 feet tall for the bass bin plus your horns. It's an exceptionally good speaker, uh, but it does not belong in a home. It doesn't belong in a home that I own.
Yeah.
It's too big.
Speaking of that, like, so there's two questions that popped out for me in the chat real quick. Elric asks, well, he already did the efficiency for the Cornscala, which you already answered. But then the other one was, well, there's two. I think one's more complicated than the other, so we'll go with the
Well,
less
can I ask? Can I,
complicated.
can I answer the efficiency question
Yeah,
real
yeah.
quick?
Hmm.
So, with speaking about these speakers in the specific, the mid-range driver typically, like this one here, is 108 dB efficient.
Hmm.
So,
I'm not gonna lie, you're looking a little horny in that room there, bud.
yes, okay.
I had to throw one in. Sorry, continue.
So this compression driver is 108 dB efficient. The only way to have the speaker speak from one voice, sound cohesive,
Hmm.
is to attenuate the mid-range driver to match the low frequency driver or be very close.
Okay.
Because if you don't, what you hear is low frequency energy and mid energy, and they're not at the same speed and they're not at the same presence, and it doesn't sound great. So sure as the sun rises, this is attenuated to this. If that is the case, what you base the efficiency of the speaker on is the least efficient biggest thing in the box, the
Hmm.
woofer. Now, for horn-loaded bass bins, like a La Scala, like a Bell, like a K horn, uh, the folded geometry adds to the efficiency of the driver. It's like the only way that actually 1 + 1 gets you 3. And so depending on who you ask, you add either between 3 dB and 5 dB of efficiency, depending on the
Okay.
horn geometry and horn shape, horn flare, to the efficiency of the driver. So when they say when Klipsch tells you that a La Scala is 101 dB efficient, they're not lying. When they say a K horn is 103 dB efficient, they're not lying. It, if they were to say that a La Scala is 103 dB efficient, not 101, and a K horn is 106 dB efficient, it is more curious.
Okay. Because then you're like, wait a
But
minute.
again, that's insanely efficient. At 98 dB, you need a 1 watt amp, maybe 3
Yeah.
watts if you're wanting dynamic range. So what was the second question?
So the second question, outside everyone making fun of me for my dad joke, was the I guess the easy one was, if you guys are paying attention to where Justin's currently owned Cornscala is do these play well against the wall? And based on your room, I'm going to say yes.
Yeah. So yes, they play really well against a room in against a wall. The reason I like corn scholars, one of the other reasons I like corn scholars, and I used to like the heresy.
Mm-hmm.
The heresy is now rear ported,
Ooh.
which means that it's boundary dependent. Its base output is boundary dependent on its distance to the back wall. That didn't used to be the case, but the way they got the heresy to stop being a 60 hertz speaker
Mm-hmm.
is by porting it.
Okay.
Uh,
Makes sense.
the Cornwall and all of my designs in general, when I build a speaker, is front ported, so I can put it. I have a tiny room; it's 12 by 12. It has to be against the back wall in general to make it work. Otherwise, you're just too darn close to the horns. And so, if it is front ported, in general, you can argue the point that it doesn't matter how far away it is from a wall.
Well, yeah, because there's nothing to interact with
It,
the back of the wall.
it's nominally base coupling the wall.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. But I mean, at the same time, like, how much of that is going to be a factor greatly, like in the bigger scheme of things? Probably not
Right,
much.
for sure, for sure.
Okay.
So, back to the point of like, do I think a Cornwall is too big? Yes, I think a Cornwall is too big. Um, and the Cornwalls, to get tighter bass and to be more cohesive, newest Cornwalls use high order filters.
Mm-hmm.
High order filters don't image particularly well without a little throttle on them. So low level listening is not their preferred, is not where they're really going to come together. So I like filters that are lower in order in general for these kinds of speakers,
Okay.
because you still get you get good enough separation, but you still have a speaker that is listenable without your wife being angry at you at 12 o'clock at night. So you get the detail that you want from the horn, but you don't have to have it so loud that you're going to bother people. There's tolerable loud, and then there's like someone coming out from bed without the pillow off of their head and looking at you cross-eyed loud. So that's the general idea.
I'm not. Yeah, it's like kind of like with at least with speakers, you'll hear them approaching. With headphones, I don't know if you ever had that happen where I've been sitting here before listening way too loud, and apparently my wife could hear me when I was wearing open backs, and all of a sudden she's just like right here, and I'm just like do 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 do, and, heart jumps out your throat, and yeah, not fun. Anyway, sorry,
For sure.
sidetrack thing. Um, so the next piece then to the next question, not next piece, next question also from Elnick was the crossovers, and can you go into the crossover a bit?
Sure. So there's a I made this. There's still some typos. I'm dyslexic as get out. Um, and it needs another revision, but we'll be able to provide this to you guys.
Mhm.
And what it has here and I'll go over the crossovers in conjunction to this. Here's what a stock Cornwall looks like dimensionally. Here's what I suggest dimensionally.
Mhm.
The whole point of this video, from my perspective, is to democratize building this speaker. A Cornscala is like a VW Beetle.
Oh, that's a pretty cool
Any
comparison.
anybody can build it, and you can turn it into a Porsche if you want to.
And they'll be
And
beastly.
that's really it's a platform more than just a speaker.
Mhm.
If you follow these steps, you'll have an exceptionally good speaker, but you also will have a platform that will let you grow if you wish to. That's an important aspect of things from my perspective, because here's an example. The horn in the horn in this speaker
Mhm.
and the horn in this speaker are the exact same. They are a Fatale
Mhm.
horn called the LTH 142. This one is completely stock, so it's a 1.4-inch horn. It goes down to 500 hertz, and it goes all the way up to 18,000 kilohertz. That's
Oh
why
wow.
it's a two-way speaker.
Okay, so it's
Um,
the beast.
right. But this one I modified so that it can accept a 2-inch driver. So this one uses a 1.4-inch driver. This one has been fully hot rodded
Oh
to
wow.
accept a different driver. In addition, I dynamatted the horn. I don't know if you can see it.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And then I sprayed the back of the horn after dynamatting it black so no one really noticed. The front of the horn was coated with a special epoxy that makes it stiffer and harder, less resonant,
Okay.
right? And this horn, again, it's $150 horn. Uh, you can get one off of eBay though to your door for $50.
So
So let me just
oh, yeah,
finish
yeah,
this.
go ahead.
This basic horn, which is if you buy it from Parts Express, great reliable provider for it, or USA Speaker, and you buy the Fatale HF 140 driver, you have a complete system. It will overperform from 500 hertz to 18,000 kilohertz without any issue.
Okay.
However, if you wanted to take it upon yourself to be a hobbyist like all of us are at some level, this one we this horn, you with 4 screws you can unbolt the back, and instead of it being a 1.4-inch driver, it becomes a 2-inch driver. We took some MDF, we made a new mounting flange for it, and now we have a 2-inch compression driver instead of a 1.4-inch compression driver. And as you
Okay,
get into
that's
the hobby more, the idea of is there less distortion at 500 hertz if your diaphragm is 1.4 inches or 2 inches? The general thinking is the bigger the diaphragm, the lower it goes with less distortion.
mhm.
Now, this driver from BNC costs the exact same as the Fatale.
Okay.
This is a monster of a driver that is essentially, from my perspective, a clone of a JBL driver that costs $800. This
Oh
costs
wow.
$250. The JBL version costs $800. They're both titanium
Oh wow.
for the diaphragm. And then there's a third option listed from Radian
Mhm.
that on my spreadsheet. It's a 1.4-inch from Radian. Part numbers listed. Reason why you'd buy the Radian is today it comes with the aluminum diaphragm, but Radian is the only company that's authorized to sell replacement beryllium diaphragms for TADs, meaning that Radian beryllium diaphragms are as good as TADs.
Okay.
Maybe you want to argue that point. Radian makes a 1.4-inch beryllium diaphragm.
Oh.
This speaker has the Radian driver, not the BNC and not the Fatale, because whenever I decide to make it really special,
Mhm.
I'm going to drop in 2 beryllium 1.4-inch radian diaphragms into it,
Mhm.
take all of about 20 minutes to do, and I'm going to have a two-way Cornscala with beryllium diaphragms.
Okay.
Kind of cool.
Yeah, very cool.
And again, it's this platform where it can go and move with people.
Yeah.
Depending on how interested or where their performance bar is.
Okay. And so the next part is where do the wheelie bars and the flames go on the side and on the back of the speaker then, right? Is that where
All right, so I'm gonna start showing how to build this and why to build it, but I'm gonna
Mhm.
come back to the horn question.
Okay.
This is probably the best domestically available horn for horn sculls that's around. It's $150. It's from Fatale. You buy it from Parts Express, or you
Gotcha.
can buy
Okay.
2 of them for $60 from your door from eBay. Somehow, magically, someone in China has the exact same mold of the exact same horn and sells it on eBay. I don't know who they are, but I've bought them and they are remarkably similar.
Odd.
So instead of buying 2 horns for a grand cost, the 2 horns at $240, I believe that you can save $180 if you bought them from eBay, provided that you searched correctly.
Mhm.
But my buddy Dave Harris, who I have learned more about horn-loaded speakers from Dave Harris and Al Klappenberger of ALK Engineering than anybody else I know. Al Klappenberger designs filters for radar installations.
Oh wow.
Al wanted a better horn for his Klipsch speakers, better than the Altec 811 horn. 811 horn or 511? 511 and 802 horn. So Al decided to build his own, do the geometry himself, and did a formula.
Oh wow.
So what you have here is probably one of the very best horns that can be bought at reasonable cost. So what you have here is an elliptical Tractrix horn, same as here. This is an elliptical Tractrix horn that's made out of ABS.
Okay.
To make its performance even better, though, you have to stiffen it with Dynamat, maybe some extra spray paint. Completely worth it, though.
Yeah.
But for $300, Dave sells a set of these, and you have to sand it. Now, I have sanded 12 of these in one weekend, and we'll never do that again. But if you're building just two, you can muscle through sanding these, because these come with like all the ridges from cutting it on the CNC router. And you have to start with like some 40 grit sandpaper, you know, wrapped around a Coke can kind of thing,
And just
working
in there.
working it down. Yes. So if you can see all the ridges,
Oh yeah, yeah.
so they're individual layers of MDF that then get doweled and glued together.
Okay.
Now, Dave's horn does 310 hertz to 18,000 kilohertz without issue,
Jesus.
and is a 2-inch horn.
That's a beast.
And some, you know, the very best speakers I've built, I use this. It is way more inert than the Fatale, but you got to be willing to sand it.
Yeah, there's a lot more that
and
comes with it, and
yeah, and have boogers that are unpleasant, and all sorts of stuff. But you know, Al Klappenberger and Dave put together the formula that did all the plotting necessary to create a Tractrix horn. So a Tractrix horn, the formulas are readily available. So if you want to create a what's called an Edgar horn of any size that goes low enough, you can. There are calculators that exist that'll give you all the XYZ point plots, and you can graph it out and then cut pieces of wood to create that horn.
Gotcha.
But elliptical horns have way better dispersion than just a horn that's like this.
Okay.
Right? And Tractrix horns give really, really good imaging. So the reason why you have an elliptical horn is better dispersion. See how it's really wide this way? So it has a really wide sound stage, but it's compressed, if you will, on the vertical axis. So it's not beaming to your ceiling and to your floor. The whole point of this kind of horn is that you're trying to good sweet spot, and you're not interacting with your floor and ceiling.
Yeah.
Because there are some really big horns that will send the energy all over the place.
And then you get crazy room problems, and
issues. So if one wanted to go to Fast Lane Audio, they could actually pick up this horn, cut a big circle, cut a big rectangle, drop these in, and you'd have a fantastic speaker. The other idea, though, Dave and Bob Kreitz sell baffles, this piece here, already cut for people, and they just mail it out to people.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to teach everybody here is buy the baffle from Bob Kreitz or Dave Harris, Fastlane Audio, or me, whoever you need to get it from, because this is all the math. This is all the important stuff already done for you that's hard. The rest of this stuff is panels of wood that you can get cut at Home Depot. And if you own a Craig jig kit, you can put it together.
Yeah. And then sand it down to be your like and all that fun stuff.
Well, I don't even think you have to. I think you have to wipe the glue away. And on that PDF I showed you, there's a product called Duratex that you can get from Parts Express, or you can get what's called Duraliner from AutoZone. And it's a roll-on bed liner. And no one will see any errors in anything you did if you use this textured roll-on bed liner.
Yeah, you just do the whole thing and be done.
Yes, 100%. So back to how to build the speaker. Again, we're going to go over, like, this will be available to everybody with part numbers and prices.
Hmm.
The first question was which crossover and why. There's
Hmm.
two crossover choices. Okay, there's Bob Kreitz, who makes a really good crossover. I think it is 275.
Hmm. Yep. 275.
Um, it is voiced similar to how Klipsch would voice it.
Okay.
Okay, so it is a little bit more forward leaning, which is tends to be what people think of as horn loaded systems. So
Hmm.
that sounds really good with more relaxed amplification. So if you had a set of Agers, some 45s, single ended triode amp, you're going to be really set because you're still going to have the detail, but you're still going to have sort of that warm mid range.
Got it.
Because a lot of those amplification, the high frequency, the air and space,
Hmm.
and the shimmer can be lost. And so that forward lean might be a good thing for people. The other crossover is from Al Klappenberger, who is a friend and a collaborator and builds some of the very most badass crossovers that exist. Now, Al, what he did, his method to the madness is Paul Klipsch used autoformers.
Hmm.
Altec and JBL have used Altec for sure used autoformers, but this is a tapped autoformer so that you can attenuate the mid range in comparison to the woofer.
Gotcha.
So you can't change the crossover frequency, but you can change how forward or how present the mid range is, or how recessed the mid range is in comparison to the woofer. So if you're somebody who wants that forward lean, you can create it. If you're somebody who wants a little bit more mellow sound, right?
Hmm.
You can also create that just as easily. It's adjustable in 1 dB increments.
Gotcha.
So the reason why to go with Al's crossovers is that it's adjustable. And uh, Al is very, very, very smart and his methods work. So that's the short of it.
Okay.
So this is what the crossover would look like
Hmm.
after you've built your cabinet. So assuming that you took my advice, you bought the baffle from Bob Kreitz or you know Dave or me, somebody gets you a baffle. The reason why you want the baffle like this is it's inset so that the horn and the front baffle, the front face of the speaker are flush. It looks like a finished product. It doesn't look like a hobby thing.
Okay.
In addition, behind this, and I'll show you when I turn the speaker around, we use what's called a doubler, so that instead of the woofer's inset by a quarter of an inch so that it doesn't protrude out the front of the speaker. And it has what I would call a trough. So it has a ring that it sits in so that the weight of the woofer is not really held by the weight of the bolts, by the bolts I use. It's actually held by the lip of the woofer.
Okay.
So the lip of the woofer is interfacing the side of the cabinet. And that's where a lot of the weight is being shouldered against. And there's this doubler. So instead of you compressing 3/4 of an inch, you're actually compressing an inch and a quarter with the doubler. So you have a lot more interfacing material to stiffen the cabinet and to reduce vibration.
Okay.
So provided that you bought the baffle, all the hard work has been done. And what Dave and I figured out how to do when we did our ports is I didn't want to buy ports from many companies make ports and they probably make a million ports at a time, million pieces of plastic that are flared or different length at a time. But if you have a baffle, like I have had baffles that I've sat around for 3 years before I decide to use them, getting that part may be difficult many years later. So what we use is ABS pipe that we get from Home Depot.
Okay.
So the port calculations are on there. All speaker drivers, woofers have what are called Thiel parameters, which one could sort of say is the physics of the known physics and behavior of a driver.
Hmm.
Right. And when you plug in the Thiel parameters into specific calculations, you can uh, calculate its behavior in different applications. There's a really good tool called Eminence Basebox Pro. You can buy it from Parts Express. Eminence Basebox Pro, you can say, I have this driver, and they have like a drop down menu and it'll show you all the drivers, or you can plug in the individual Thiel parameters
Uh-huh.
And then you say, I have this box with these dimensions, with this port that is this big and this long. What's the measured bass response of my driver?
Oh wow. And they'll just
Yes.
that's cool.
So if you remember, I sent you a picture and there was all these numbers and calculations.
Mm-hmm.
That was right from BassBox Pro.
Oh, okay.
And what this speaker, the way it's tuned with the porting, is it's an honest 40 hertz speaker, which means that you have a 98 dB efficient speaker that goes 40 hertz in room to 18,000 kilohertz with only one crossover point.
Okay.
Pretty good hat trick.
That's pretty good.
Now, the question of, do I buy Al's crossover or do I buy Bob Kreitz's? That's a different question. That's, what you decide is most valuable to you and how you want to do it. They both work fantastically. The next question, or the next thing we build, is our horn. Whether you get it from eBay or you get it from Parts Express, the Fatale LTH 142 is a great horn. It does 500 hertz to 18,000 kilohertz, which matches the 500 hertz crossover point of my crossover.
Okay.
And is then matched to my mid-range driver. They're 1 inch. So something to know. Someone might say, Justin, why aren't you using a 1-inch horn? They're really cheap and they're really accessible. 1-inch horns almost always can only go to about 800 hertz. Now, the Atlas PV55, which is what Klipsch has used for 50 years, can go down to 400 hertz and all the way up to 6,000 kilohertz. So it's really good as a three-way, because most of the time we cross over at 5,600 hertz to a tweeter, but it's really not good enough if you are trying to get it to be a two-way. If you were to make this smaller and wanted it with a 1-inch driver, you'd have to cross it at 800 hertz or 1,200 hertz. There's a lot of good drivers that are made. A lot of us remember a driver called the Selenium 220 Ti. Selenium then got bought by JBL. But the Selenium 220 Ti went from 1,200 hertz to 20,000 kilohertz. And it was the basis of a speaker called the EconoWave. Lots of people built. Kind of the same idea, but smaller. Okay, so whether you're using the Fatale HF200, the B&C DE85, or the Radian super badass, I don't remember the name of, all of them cross at 500 hertz and all of them go to 18,000 kilohertz. The Radian actually goes to 20. And when you listen to it, you know that it's going to 20. It actually goes higher. So again, the crossover, the horn, or the big horn right here, right? And the driver all have to work together and all have to be matched together. Okay? And again, that doesn't matter for the cabinet. This would perform just as well if I plopped it on right here on top, just like that. I've done it before. Lots of people do it.
Well, it's like the old record horns from back in the day, right? The little crank tables.
Right. And there's a belief by aligning the magnet assemblies, you're getting time alignment. Al's crossovers actually provide for pretty good time alignment passively without matching the distance of the magnet assemblies of the drivers. So I'm going to turn this around so I get some more detail shots for you guys, if you don't mind. So if you have built these way too many times, you can learn some things about how to do them differently, and maybe better. I have opened and closed cabinets so many times that the screws stopped holding. I no longer use screws. In addition, I stopped what we call face mounting woofers, because to hold a woofer to a cabinet face mounted, which Klipsch used to do in their Gen 1 50 years ago Cornwalls, the screws and their tension is the only thing holding that driver in place. Whereas if you recess it, the side saddle of the driver is actually the thing that's bearing the weight. the bolts or screws are the things that are just holding it in place.
Hmm.
So the weight is being held on the shoulder, and the push or suck in force is held by the bolt or the screw. That said, this cabinet here and all of its components use quarter 20 fasteners. So the biggest hole that this woofer will allow for on its bolt holes are quarter-inch fasteners. So everything is a quarter-inch. So I use quarter-inch thread certs. You can get bolts, really fancy bolts like I've used, which are called Allen heads. We call them Allen head button heads, or they're Allen keyed button heads. So they're rounded head, and they use an Allen socket, like for an Allen wrench, and they're black oxide because I almost always my speakers are black oxide fasteners. You don't see them, so that's the idea. McMaster-Carr is a fantastic resource for getting bolts or thread certs or washers that are of a specific size, and their application is so good that you can spend a lot of money in about 30 seconds. You can go from picking out a part to being done and it's shipping to you in like 30 seconds. It's kind of bad because you can spend money really, really, really quickly with it, unfortunately. So if you see here, there's at least 12 quarter 20 fasteners, quarter 20 thread certs in this driver. And the what I call the rib plate of the back and the front baffle is what I call dadoed. Or not I call it's called dadoing into place.
Okay.
So if you have a saw blade and you cut a trough or a groove repeatedly, it creates a dado, which is sort of a recess.
Hmm.
And so the front and the back of the cabinet go into that recess. And so they are resistant to moving.
Just
Right. So if you're a hobbyist and you have a table saw, it's just a question of being patient and doing all the little things that you know to make a better cabinet. So I'm going to go over some of those ideas. Okay.
hmm
I have built, and we still use the Craig jig kits that you can get from Home Depot or Amazon.
yeah, pretty cheap too.
50-60 bucks to create pockets to key everything together.
Hmm.
And if you get a flush router bit, everything that you do will come out nice and look perfect when it's all done. So here are some tricks to the cabinetry that make it better. I'll get to the bottom in a second, I guess. Okay, lots and lots of thread certs, lots of bolts, no screws. The reason for this is that screws eventually get stripped out. You're going to open and close this cabinet lots of times. People will ask, why do I even have a back that is removable when I can load everything from the front? You're 100% right, but if you ever want to service it easily,
It's just easier to
if I was
put
a manufacturer and we were building it one time and pushing it out the door, this would be silly perhaps and unneeded.
Hmm.
But I'm a hobbyist and a tinkerer and a trier, and you're gonna wanting to learn from things and verify things. You're gonna want to have this so that you can open it up and access everything in the speaker very, very easily.
Yeah.
So Bob Kreitz sells this bracket here, which I think they're like 20 bucks each. They're money well spent. Depending on how heavy your driver is, you can put a lot of force on this plastic ABS horn. The horn is fantastic, but it's not as thick as like Dave's horn is. And all horns are weakest at their narrowest point, being right where my hand is. And so putting, a 15-pound driver at the back of it, you're going to have some
A little stress there.
put a stress fracture into it. But where if you put this bracket in, which is just a bent piece of metal,
Hmm.
and then you put a brace right here, that brace will shoulder all the weight of that driver, transferring all that weight into the brace rather than to the back of the horn. Being obsessed with bolts, again, it's bolted into place. So it doesn't just rest there.
It's
I
actually
drilled.
it's in there.
Oh, it'll never leave unless it's unbolted. Because it's quarter 20 fasteners again
Mhm.
from McMaster Car, but you could have. I have bought them from Home Depot. Home Depot has $12 kits with 20 of them in there.
Mhm.
That are inch and a half long or 2 inch long, depending on what you need,
Yeah.
and with a Phillips head. That's more than that's a good enough answer.
Yeah.
So we have a brace here. You only needed one brace. The rib plate is dadoed into place. You don't have to do that. You end up needing, if you don't do this, first strips, Andy.
Uh, I forget. That's not quite it. But
A fir strip, or whatever the term
like
is called, is a little piece of wood that goes behind a panel that holds the panel in place.
Mhm.
Uh, it's not the best answer. It's a good enough answer.
Yeah, good enough. But then it won't have that flush look. It won't have that more like that final nice
Yes.
touch, right? Like by having it dated,
I
we have
mean,
that nice little touch
uh,
to it.
in the sheet we're going to share, these cabinets, I had a local cabinet maker
Mhm.
charge me $400 to make them in
Yeah.
Los Angeles. I think that you could probably get this done cheaper in some place other than Los Angeles.
Yeah, probably $100 to $400 would probably be the range you're looking at to have someone build that for
Or if you have a really good friend, it's an 18 pack of beer and
you.
some pizza.
True. Good medium priced bottle of whiskey.
100%. One of the things that we did is we built in these deflectors. So if you see here and here, where the cabinet comes together at a 90-degree angle, we cut little triangle pieces of wood and they're glued into place. The idea is that you don't have a right angle, and so that the sound waves can actually bounce around a little bit easier. They don't get trapped. In theory, I am not the physicist or mechanical engineer or acoustic engineer that can explain the theory behind it. But the prevailing wisdom is that by doing things like that, you get a cabinet that is more inert and better behaved, and it's cheap to do. It's
Yeah,
pieces of
pieces
wood
of wood.
that you've cut on a 45
Mhm.
to fill in the voids of a right angle corner.
Yeah, and you should
So
already have the wood on hand, building the or having when you purchase the wood cabinet. So
you can buy 2 by 2 pieces of wood at Home Depot, which
Mhm.
is truthfully 1.5 inch by 1.5 inch, and
Mhm.
you cut it along the
We have
diagonal,
45.
and that'll create your 45s.
And pop it in there, you're good. And that's like I think a couple
100%.
bucks.
And what we've done on the top ones, because the top ones are easier, we have braces for the ports down here. But what we've done on the top ones is they're actually, a 32nd of an inch a little too long. So there's a compression fit.
Oh, okay.
So
You have to kind
what,
of.
yes. So the idea is that they're putting tension against the back rib plate and the front baffle so that they can't push inward on each other when the driver's actuating. The last thing real quick, if I don't mind for a second.
Yeah, are you?
So Klipsch has always done a riser with their speaker, and I've seen enough and repaired enough of these to know that the riser was there as a sacrificial piece of wood when there's flood damage. So having a sacrificial piece of wood so that the whole cabinet doesn't get water damage is a really, really smart idea.
Mhm.
I took that one step further and built a girding plate on the bottom of the speaker, and we tapered the sides at 45s. So it looks like the speaker, when it's on the ground, is floating on your carpet.
Oh, that's cool.
So you have just enough room to get the tip of your thumb all the way around it, but it's largely there. Again, I use thread certs and bolts, same bolt I use everywhere else, and it's bolted into place, thus stiffening the back panel to an inch and a
Yeah,
half thick, or the bottom panel to an inch and a half thick, and making it so the speaker floats.
that's cool.
And then one last little wood idea to share. So extra plywood, you take a long piece that goes the full width of the cabinet, and it goes right here.
Mhm.
And then you take a piece that fills in that void right here. You glue and screw,
Mhm.
glue and nail. And this now, when the cabinet is put in and all the edge pieces are surrounded and pinched, this now sucks in the center of that piece of plywood.
Mm-hmm.
By doing that, in theory, you're essentially doubling its breakup mode
Mm-hmm.
by having the distance of the panel, because now the panel is being pinched right here. It's now only half as long and is much more resistant to vibration. And if it vibrates, it's vibrating at a much higher frequency, hopefully out of the audio band.
Yeah. Oh, that's smart.
So, and that's just extra plywood and a little bit of extra time. Can you build this with screws? Drywall screws like everybody does? 100%. This speaker, soup to nuts, with Duratex to finish it, is like $2,800 or so. Mm-hmm. If you're looking at commercial prices.
Yeah.
The Cornwall is an $8,000 speaker. and it's going to be, the Cornwall is going to be more beautiful, mm-hmm. but this will have pride of ownership and will have you understand what you're listening to. And if you go one step lower on the Klipsch line to the Forte, mm-hmm. the Forte is a $6,000 speaker. Yeah. You're still in this for $3,000.
Yeah.
And if you want pretty, there's a veneering company that I use that's really exceptional called GL Veneer. Mm-hmm. And as I showed one of my friends, you can get engineered rosewood veneer that is absolutely beautiful for $200 for a 4x8 sheet, which is more than enough to do this. And if you're really smart, what you do is you do all of the sides in the rosewood veneer. The front baffle is painted black, and the rear back panel is painted black, thus to conserve some veneer. At which point you could probably get away with a $100 sheet of rosewood veneer, and you watch some YouTube videos on doing lacquer finish or linseed oil finish that you brush on.
Yeah.
You know, and then you have a really beautiful speaker. Now, some little extra tidbits that I didn't put on the sheet of paper, but just to remember. Mm-hmm. I think grills are important. I have grills on my speakers. They use double-sided magnets, neodymium magnets that you get from Parts Express. Mm-hmm. And I get my speaker fabric from Parts Express, or you can get it from Joann's. Mm-hmm. I think grills are a very good, important idea. If you do grills, having what's called an inset right here where I have my finger. So most MDF is either 5/8 or 3/4 inch. I generally, if you're going to do a grill, is going to use 3/4 inch plywood.
Okay.
Right? 3/4 inch plywood, I will have an inset of 5/8 so that it sits proud outside of the channel here, outside of the inset by 1/4 inch.
Oh wow.
So you want the grill to pucker out 1/4 inch away from the speaker. Mm-hmm. It's how we do it.
Yeah.
And if you're really smart, you round the corners of your grill, because the grill fabric does not like right angle corners. So if you take some 40 grit sandpaper, just round the corners, or a 1/4 round router bit, run the edges, you'll be perfectly fine. The rear of the speaker, and I've learned this one, lots and lots of experience, is inset an extra 1/8 inch. So this is inset approximately slightly a hair 1/8 over 3/4 inch, so that the rear of the speaker is not completely flush with the sides. Right?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Because if you don't do that, you're gonna peel a piece of plywood somehow doing something stupid. Mm-hmm. So the best thing to do is by insetting it, you prevent yourself from doing that. And when you take your back panel, lots of bolts, if you take my suggestion, right? Bolt holes always look ugly. Mm-hmm. They're always going to have some piece of plywood missing. You can't fix that very easily. So the best thing to do, really big washers. So again, I use black oxide button head fasteners. Mm-hmm. So for this, they're all 1.5 inches long. And I use 1.5 inches in diameter washers. The idea behind that also is I'm generating more pull force, a wider area. So I'm trying to get the cabinet to be the back panel to be as stiff as possible when it's fully fastened into place. So the last component to talk about is wiring. Anybody who knows my amps knows that I have a thing for Jupiter condenser, which, I just got some swag from them today, which is super, super cool. I'm actually going to be building myself a Fender Champ with their parts in a little bit. So
Nice.
this is going to be super cool to add to the cabinet. I have traditionally used a 16 gauge wire that is OFC copper, oxygen free copper, that is tinned with silver, plated with silver in a Teflon jacket. You can search for it on eBay. Sometimes you can find it, sometimes you can't. I don't actually know the supplier, so you're always buying someone's surplus. And in all these years, I can't find the right supplier.
Mm-hmm.
What you wire the speaker in can change its voicing. Some people like Belden wire. Belden makes a wire that's like orange and black. It's super popular. It's not my idea of a good time. I don't use it. I use the silver plated copper. But the next best thing, and I've had really, really, really good results, is this is Western Electric style wire.
Okay.
Dueland makes that, and now Jupiter makes this.
Oh, nice.
And so this is 16 gauge OFC copper that is tinned in a fabric jacket and twisted.
Oh, that's
so
pretty cool.
this is what Western Electric used in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. And this is, many people think that we do it newer, and fancier, but Western Electric always did it better. And so, this is what I'll be wiring this one in, is with Western Electric wire.
Nice.
And I got that from Jupiter. And again, I put a link in on the page.
Mm-hmm.
Again, the point of the speaker is, look, it allows you can use big power amps and you'll love the dynamic scale of it, but you can also use really intimate, good sounding amplification that didn't break the bank to get, or vintage amplification. Like if you have this plus like an old Magnavox receiver that you turned into an amplifier, you have a mighty fine sound.
Yeah.
And that kind of accessibility, and then the ability to choose whether to go, follow the formula or to go really creative and esoteric is fantastic. I guess the last point, by the way, the woofer. The woofer is an Eminence Kappa 15C. So Klipsch, their part numbers are curious. So they call this woofer would be called a K43.
Okay.
The Eminence makes the woofers for Klipsch. Okay.
Fair enough.
And the K33 is what goes into a K horn, a Cornwall, and a Scala. And it has about half the magnet of the K43. The K43 is what went into the Pro La Scala, the Pro Cinema series, the Pro K horn, everything that was meant to handle more power and more abuse and keep on ticking, right? Was the K43.
Oh wow.
You can't buy an Eminence equivalent K33, but you can buy an Eminence equivalent K43 called the Kappa 15C. And
So
oh, by the way, the woofer is twice, the magnet of the woofer is twice as large. So that's the basics of the speaker. I'd love to answer some questions if you guys have some.
Real quick, I have why horns?
Okay, why horns? So compression drivers are small, rigid diaphragms that are generally very low in distortion. Horns allow these small drivers, small diaphragms, to have acoustic coupling, to have their sound amplified, to be usable. So that's the why of the horn. The real question though is why compression drivers and horns versus cone drivers?
Mm-hmm.
And the simple answer is, do you like? I was going to cuss, but do you like speed? Do you like scale? Do you like dynamics? These are the bastions.
Do I get Keanu Reeves with my speed?
You
Sorry.
get like You get Superman in the light box.
Okay, right up.
You know how you get the black caped Superman?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what a horn and a compression driver gets you. So what I tend to tell people about this style speaker or horns in general is it's like having a caged gorilla. It has every capacity to rip your arms off you and beat you with it. These are rated to play at 124, 130 decibels. That's like having a jet airplane take off next to you.
Yeah.
The trick of it, though, is to teach them table manners. The trick of horn-loaded systems, which are pro audio in concept,
mm-hmm.
is to use them in a way that they are domestically pleasing, that they are not going to hurt you, that they, you are never going to play a horn-loaded system at its full capacity unless you've lost your hearing.
Mm-hmm.
That's just the truth of it. Now, the question, like if you hear distortion from your horn-loaded system, it is probably not your horn-loaded system, but rather your amplification that's providing you the distortion.
Yeah.
So if you want scale, if you want huge imaging, very quick, that's why you choose horns.
And they're super efficient as well, right? So you're talking,
yes,
like they're saying 1 to 3 watt amplifier should do the trick.
So I have
as Mr. Tubby's saying. Thank you, Mr. Tubby.
Yes. I have a set of Falcon LS3 5As that are like 84 dB efficient, and they sound great on my low power amps. They really, really do.
Mm-hmm.
But the prevailing wisdom is that you need a 50 watt amp for that to start to light up.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I think the LS3 kind of bends physics in that way. But if you had a Sonos Faber that's 84 dB efficient, you're going to need a 50 to 100 watt amp. Whereas if you had a horn loaded system for that same level of sound, you need a 3 watt amp.
Got it. And so basically that's such a wide range of amplifiers that you can use with these. It's ridiculous.
100%. Now, but things that become important about the amplifiers are that they are quiet. If you have a noisy amplifier, you will hear it and be unhappy.
Because these things are so efficient. So it's kind of like the whole, if you have like a very efficient headphone and you throw it on a tube amp, you'll pick up the tube noise kind of thing. Kind of similar.
Potentially,
concept.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And then so the next question, Henrik says I get Gary Busey with my speed. Is let's see here. Well, actually, JTB has a really good statement. He's like, just when you thought the bottlehead crack would be a challenging DIY project, the Cornscala comes along and says, "Hold my beer."
Here's a good example. Do you like your bottlehead crack, or do you want to? Do you run your bottlehead with the crack upgrade, or do you run your bottlehead without? If I was owning a bottlehead, I would not have this, or speedball. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
if I had
speedball.
The crack, I would not be doing the speedball. Right. So that's just a simple idea. This speaker is as easy or easier to build than anything that's sold like by Sound that has the multiple drivers. We've been on the forums, you see all the guys that talk about it and they're like, how am I going to build this? Like this crossover?
Yeah.
I'm not suggesting building your own crossover. I'm telling you where to buy the parts and put them together in a way that will yield performance that matches or exceeds what is commercially available.
And you can make this as easy or as hard as you want. on the build wise. Like, I mean, it's based on what you've been talking to me about and what I've been seeing. You can go as super simple, but in my experience, I built the ball head crack myself, and if I can build that thing, I'm sure like anybody can build any of these things. It's just time and patience,
Well,
and just
so
going for it.
Bob Kreitz, is an enormously important special resource, as is the Klipsch forum, as is the Lansing JBL sites.
Mm-hmm.
But Bob Kreitz sells essentially this speaker with the Fatale HF 140 and his own crossover at a very, very, very fair price.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a great sounding speaker. I would just tell you that it's 30% bigger than it needs to be. He's not going to give you the smaller version.
Mm-hmm. Now,
if you can handle a speaker being 25 inches wide and 35 inches tall,
I mean, to give reference, how you're not a little guy, like.
no, I'm 6'1", 300 pounds. So this is,
Yeah, and it's not a small speaker by any means, but yours is still 30% smaller than the Klipsch.
Yeah, so a Cornwall is this wide and this tall,
which is insane. It's such a big speaker.
So I'm going to ask, because I have some guys in the room that I trust their opinion. Guys, do you have questions that you want to have answered? Like hearing what I've talked about as far as the Cornwall and. Okay. How about you, Andy? Anything that you've seen me build enough of these things?
No, I don't. I will ask you this question: would you put this speaker on a color base?
I wouldn't. Well, so that Andy brought up an interesting question. Would I put it on a taller base?
Oh yeah.
I think what he's asking is, Justin, this isn't at the height of your ear, and he's right. But the lens flare of the lens being another word for horn, the lens flare cups upward ever so slightly. So if you were to take a thread and match the lens flare of the upward pattern of where, as it slopes upward, and your distance, drop something, and your distance from it, I think that you'd find that it still extends high frequency energy to approximately to where your ear should be. Could it be taller? Yes. I like them as small as I can make them. Another interesting question though is, why aren't you building a three-way? A three-way costs just as much as a two-way to build. You can buy a tweeter. So JBL made this tweeter that's very famous called the baby cheek horn. It looks like two baby butts put together. And you can buy this horn that's an ABS plastic version of this horn for like $8, and you can buy a thread-on compression driver that's really, really, really good for like $25. So for like, I don't know, $50 extra, you can make it a three-way. Having built so many of these, I will tell you, everybody who listens to a three-way next to a two-way will say, "Oh my God, I prefer the three-way. I like the extra detail. I like the shimmer."
But a room full of hornies, a three-way, as exciting as that might sound, the horns you like better.
Well, no, so a three-way horn system. I mean, like if you had an extra horn right here.
So extra horny three-way system. Got it.
Yes. It is not as relaxed a sound. And, I try to go for a sound where I can listen to 2 albums worth of music in a sitting and not feel fatigue. And tweeters, I mean, as I get older, maybe as my hearing fades further and further, my high frequency hearing fades further and further, I will be more interested in a three-way system. But I appreciate the lack of the extra crossover point. So it makes for a more coherent sound, more uniform sound. And it is a more relaxed, less fatiguing sound. And these are all important aspects. I mean, look, I own this speaker here, and it's the same speaker I have in my living room.
Yeah.
I don't own the three ways.
We did those videos, your different tours videos that
Yep.
you can find on Justin's Instagram, and those I'm gonna post all that stuff, like Justin's links to his website and all the Instagram stuff, so you can see all that stuff later, everyone. But in the description once the video's over. But go check those out because you can see all of Justin's listening rooms and where he explains why and why he has the stuff he has there. So it's really.
I mean, look,
interesting.
I think three ways are interesting, but my own personal preference is a more relaxed sound that has less high frequency energy. I don't think I lose a lot of detail. I don't think I lose a lot of space, but I get a more coherent sound. And so that's,
Mhm.
but you can build a three-way version. Bob Kreitz sells a three-way version of this Baffle. But then again, it's still going to be a Cornwall size. And I think that
Yeah.
in general, the Cornwall size is just too darn big.
Yeah, I can see that.
And oh, by the way, it's too big for the darn woofer. If you run the calculations with a cabinet size that's 6.5 cubic feet instead of 4, you get a woofer that behaves at 44 hertz and doesn't have enough back pressure, and so the bass is slightly more sloppy, which may sound like more bass output.
Hmm.
But if you want tight, taut bass
Everyone
that goes
wants
down to
tight top
40,
bass.
that goes down to 40 hertz, a smaller cabinet with this woofer behaves better.
Makes sense.
So there we are.
Would Mr. Tubby says no crossover, no problem. We actually talked about that before about the
Well,
crossover.
but if you guys said, "Hey, I don't want to do this crossover, Justin," like I don't want to buy the crossover for $300, and I don't want to buy the crossover for $600.
Mhm.
I understand that. Then go buy a mini DSP
Mhm.
and buy an extra amp and,
Yeah.
and make it fully active.
And then,
That would be kind of cool.
yeah, it'd be an interesting challenge, if nothing else, too, right? Like we kind
It's not even a challenge. I mean, it's 100% easy to do. Mini DSP even sells a DAC streamer that has Dirac Live in it and can behave as a active four-way crossover.
Hmm.
And you could run different slopes, and you can have different shelf parameters really easily because it's a two-way. Like if you did a three-way, you need 3 stereo amplifiers. If you do a two-way, you need 2 stereo amplifiers. That's not rocket science. That's
Yeah.
not hard.
Yeah, 1 + 1
And then
is
you don't
2.
need a crossover. You just buy the mini DSP box.
Hmm.
I mean, you could buy the mini DSP box. You used to be able to buy it for $100 that would do this.
Yeah, I think they're more expensive now, but yeah,
$239.
yeah, I think it's around the 200 something. I think, yeah.
Right, but if you get 2 amp camp amps, and instead of running them in mono, you run them as, one of them does the bass, one of them does your mids,
Hmm.
and an active crossover. That's a cool idea.
Yeah.
That's just 2 sets of binding posts.
Get a small home theater receiver and use all the multi-channel amps in it.
And Andy suggested a small home theater receiver will do the same thing. He's right.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. Well, there you go. There's the answer. Yeah.
The nice thing is that these speakers have been built for about 40 years and have been built by hobbyists for the last 20. All of the math and
Been probably
engineering
cranked through.
has been cranked through. And so what I'm advocating is follow the prescriptive advice. You'll get a good speaker
Mhm.
at essentially 1/3 the cost of retail.
And on that topic, or on that note, Matt asks from Smith and Rune. He asks because you mentioned the Fortes, and so where would these fall in like the Klipsch lineup as far as like price or performance? Not price. We're not worried about price, but performance wise. In your opinion, where would these fall?
So they're asking where would these fall in the Klipsch line? So Klipsch makes in their Pro series, Klipsch made essentially in their Pro series what should have been the Cornwall, and they chose not to do it.
Mhm.
They had a horn called the K510, which was
Okay.
a 500 hertz horn that was a 2-inch 500 hertz horn. They owned this horn for the last like 12 years, and they only used it in their prosumer line. Okay. And then they had a cabinet just like this with a single woofer, and then they put the K510 right on top of it with an umbilical cord to the crossover. This is that speaker. Now, if you're asking in reference to their heritage line, which
Mhm.
is not their pro line,
Yeah,
pro line is like the stuff you find behind home theaters with 100-inch screens.
gotcha.
Okay, this is a Cornwall 4. Now, does the Cornwall differences and look, I love Klipsch speakers. I'm not endeavoring to talk poorly upon them. The Vox group who took over Klipsch has invested in R&D and really brought out the very best of what they do. But if
Mhm.
we're having an academic discussion about pros and cons, the Cornwall 3
Mhm.
uh, used the same size horn as the Heresy 3.
Okay.
So you had a big 15-inch woofer and you had a tiny, tiny horn because they lost the mold or broke the mold for the appropriate horn.
Oh wow.
So it had the
That's
same tweeter and mid range on the Cornwall 3 as they did the Cornwall 4. Okay.
Mhm.
Now, the Cornwall 4, I believe, is it the 4 now or the 5? Whatever. The current Cornwall at this point has the big horn. So so maybe it's the 5. I may have the number of the generation off, but the argument still stands. The last Cornwall, the last Forte that came out had a bigger horn than the last Forte that came out, which was sort of lower in the performance category than the Cornwall, had a bigger horn than the Cornwall. Okay, and then the newest Forte that came out had an even bigger horn. The newest Forte that came out has two principal changes that have made it better than the Fortes. Its mid horn is bigger than the Forte's mid horn. Finally, thank God. Stop. Fantastic.
Run, go do good things.
Number two, they're using a high order filter, which gives them better articulation, better separation, better bass slam.
Mhm.
But if you're now asking the question, does a higher order filter sound better than a low order filter? It depends at what volume you listen.
Fair. And
Now, the reason now you could ask then a separate question, which is, do I like knowing the provenance of the drivers I buy, or do I trust the manufacturer to have bought the very best drivers for me? I can't argue. I can't answer that.
yeah.
That's a value proposition. I think their drivers are Klipsch's drivers are exceptionally good. You
Mhm.
are paying as an end consumer way too much for the driver that you're going to buy. That's the truth. You're not buying 10,000 of them.
Yeah.
But the nice thing is that you got to choose what you bought.
Yeah.
And if that matters to you, then this is a good idea
Mhm.
because you can then make your own decision as to what's the right value proposition for you.
And you can play with it. You can tweak it. You can make it your own. You can. Mhm.
Yes.
And with that, so to answer Matt's direct question, so I
It's
see
as good as a Look, a Forte, the new Forte, is a giant killer of a speaker,
Mhm.
and in some ways is better than the Cornwall because that 15-inch passive radiator
Mhm.
extends its low frequency, um, extends the low frequency delivery, and provides a second radiating pattern. It gives better bass than
Mhm.
the Cornwall 4.
Okay.
It also sounds like it's trying harder to do it.
It's a try hard.
It
Got
also
it.
it also needs to be near a back wall.
Mm.
So if you said, does a Forte sound less effortless, than a Cornwall? No, a Cornwall sounds less. The Cornwall seems like a more mature speaker, and it does it with greater ease.
Mhm.
As does a La Scala seem like a more mature speaker than a Cornwall, and does it with more ease. But the Cornwall doesn't care where it's placed in relation to a back wall, and a La Scala is 2 feet deep. If you have a home that can tolerate a speaker that is 2 feet wide and 2 feet deep, then the La Scala is a great choice.
Yeah.
Except for the La Scala, interestingly, strangely enough, still uses the K400 horn that was built 25 years ago. The Forte and the Cornwall
Mhm.
currently have a bigger horn and more modern, better performing drivers in theory than the mid-range driver of a La Scala. The biggest improvement to the La Scala in recent memory has been its crossover and its fit and finish.
So with that, so basically, for me, and my understanding of this is that this is this is kind of a competitor to the Forte in some levels. Then,
I think it's a competitor to a Forte, and it
so
is
like anything, it
and
excels in some
it,
and isn't in other
what
areas, right? Like,
I would put it as a competitor to a La Scala, to a Cornwall. Truthfully, now if you want that air and space more so, then maybe the Cornwall is a better choice because it's a three-way.
yeah,
And if you want to listen at higher volumes, maybe the Cornwall is a better choice because higher order filters are going to behave better at moderate to higher volumes. But if you need to make adjustments to your speaker, the Cornwall 4 is not adjustable. If
That's
you
fair.
buy Al's crossover or go active, it's adjustable.
Yeah, and you can really start to play with it and tweak it.
Mm-hmm.
So then Sleepy asks, to move to another question. Sleepy asks, what music genre best suits the Cornscala? I mean, I think
Okay.
I think it should have a generalized. I think it should play all music really decently. I mean, that's just the nature of things. But in your opinion, what's your favorite thing that it excels?
So they were asking what genre of music does the Cornwall play well with? So I'll tell you sort of, look, I am a huge fan of singer-songwriter things. So, Paul Simon is probably my favorite artist.
Big on Paul Simon.
But do I really love the Lumineers?
Yeah.
Do I really love Vampire Weekend? There was this album that was a reimagining of Elton John, where they do, I forgot what it was called, but it's sort of like a neon lighting of Elton John, and it's all different artists doing Elton John's songs, reimagined. And there's modern bass hooks that are added to like Elton John, and modern synth added to Elton John songs,
which is cool.
And the ability to pick out the singer and still hear the articulation of the synthesizer in combination is something that I think these speakers really do well, that they have real bass, but they have real speed. And yet they are texturally accurate.
I mean, let's be real here. That's a 15-inch woofer. Like, that thing's a beast.
But I mean, like, if you want like sort of a compare and contrast, I own those Falcons. Those Falcons, don't have bass. They have bass, they have like pretend bass. If you want, like, if I don't have a better way of saying it, they have bass, but it's not the same as the Cornscala. But the Falcon has a trueness in the voice that is uncanny.
Yeah.
The LS3, but that's what it's known for. That's its shtick.
Mm-hmm.
I like the Cornscala in that I don't ever feel like it's overly colored by any means, and it's not dry either, but that it has the ability to have pace and rhythm while still presenting an authentic voice.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay. And next thing, so Sleepy also asked, do you like James Taylor? That's a quick, easy one.
I went to his concert. I think most of James Taylor's work is too slow for me.
Fair.
In its melodic composition, it's too slow. Like, there's some songs that we all know that are more upbeat or faster in pace as far as the storytelling, and those resonate more with me as for James Taylor's works. But when he is just waxing melodically slowly, it's not for me.
That's fair. And then JTB asks, so the point is, it's better to have a big horn than to have a tiny, tiny horn. Are we still talking about speakers?
Yes, we're talking about speakers.
And then Matt says, yeah, it does. Horns do seem to follow BHK logic, Matt. And thanks for joining, buddy. We'll catch you on the Discords later. And then DR, nice to see you, buddy. Thanks for joining. So
And guys, I do want to underscore,
Mhm.
you know, if you go to Klipsch forums, lots and lots and lots of us have built these speakers. Sometimes they get built with two 15-inch woofers. They're called the DBB, double bass bins. What I was hoping to do with this is show people a short list of the things. If you use these parts, this has been tried and true, and you'll get a really good speaker. Sometimes we can't afford a $3,000 speaker right away.
Yeah, true. You can slowly
But
buy
you
these parts and eventually have a
100%. You can, if you buy your Baffle 1 month and then you buy your mid-range drivers 1 month, or you buy your crossovers. Al takes like 2 months to get his crossovers done. Like, you know, you have a way to chip away at this and end up with something much more special than just the totality of its parts.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, though sometimes people have been really friendly and informative, they're not always. And so I was trying to give people a way to build something and have a backstopped resource that, like, hey, if we do it the way Justin said, follow the ones in bold.
It's a known in quantity that can definitely sound fantastic.
Yes.
And so another quick side question: so you do have your own company,
Mhm.
and no obligation or anything like that. Is there and don't feel like if you don't have to answer.
Sure.
Is there any plans to maybe potentially where you would create like a DIY kit?
So, I mean, do I have plans to create a DIY kit? So, if you guys know, I used to build a set of Cornscalas called the Hudson and called the Seneca. And they were really, really expensive and they didn't sell well. Though now, if you look at the market, there are lots of horn loaded speakers that are selling in the same price range. Um, I don't want to sell finished speakers. Am I willing to sell kits? Or would I like to just sell baffles for people? Yes, I'm happy to sell people baffles.
Mm-hmm.
If someone wanted a super modified horn so they could run special drivers, I'd like to sell them that and make a little bit doing that. But this is something you have to have some ownership of
Mm-hmm.
in the process, because then it's yours.
Yeah.
It's not just something it's not just something you bought, it's something you built. It's a
Mm-hmm.
different concept. So I will say this, two things. One, because I wanted to talk to you guys tonight and I didn't think anybody would believe me that this was once a kit or a bunch of parts, I built this. If somebody wants this setup, you guys, just exactly what I have in it, which is in the sheet that you have, I will sell it happily to anybody, and we can ship it on a pallet to whoever wants it. And then all you got to do is paint it,
or throw some veneer on it, and
or stain it.
or
So
stain.
yes,
Yeah, I've seen
I,
that.
I have a I have a pair of these, and someone's more than welcome to take them off my hands, because otherwise they're going in my pool table room. But Dave Harris in general likes to sell horned kits.
Mm-hmm.
You know, his horns. I have the capacity, because of my relationship with with some wood cabinet builders, to have these finished and look pretty like this.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, if someone wanted this pair, they're more than welcome to take this pair from me. Um, you know, and if someone wanted Dave's horn system, we've offered it so that you can either order this from me and I'll source it from Dave, or we have the same speaker with Dave's horn.
Okay.
And so you buy the baffle and you either pick out which one with which horn combination you come with, and you'll get you'll get a flat stack of 4 sheets of plywood. 2 of them are your grills, 2 of them are your baffles. And if you chose the horns, you'll either get the horns in a kit, where
Mhm.
you assemble it and finish it yourself, or we'll finish it for people. Again, I like the idea of helping people and building a community of builders.
Yeah.
I don't want to sell speakers.
Yeah,
They take
that's
up a
fair.
lot of space.
And they're heavy, they're expensive. Yeah. Agreed.
It's not. They take up a lot of space.
Yeah. I mean, so I was joking with Taryn jumped in for a little bit in the chat, and I was joking, it's like you know these are even as small as these are in comparison. You know these are big speakers because of how big I know you are, and when you look like kind of like, it doesn't help like the way that we have this set up and everything. But they make you look like a smaller guy. I'm not gonna lie. when you
Well, no. If you guys look at like my very first Cornscala, it was um, it was 4 feet tall, 2 feet deep, and 2 feet wide,
Mhm. Which is insane. That's massive.
and it didn't perform better than this.
Yeah,
This performed better than that used to.
it's great. That's fantastic. I mean,
You
I
know, so the
honestly.
question,
Oh, go ahead.
do you need size? And no, I don't think, like, you may need it this size.
Hmm.
Like we've done other, like we may start offering, if people are really interested, other designs that we have worked through the geometry and have built before.
Hmm.
Like we have a skinnier corn scala that I built that was a 3-way, and I have a skinnier corn scala that's a 2-way, but it uses a 12-inch woofer, not a 15. So we may start offering that if people are interested. I need to see if people are interested. People need to hold their hand up and say, like, this idea excites me.
Hmm.
This though, look, I own 4 of these. I
Yeah.
believe in these.
I mean,
And
proofs in the pudding were kind of right. Like.
right. And if you don't want to get it from me, go get it from Bob Kreitz. And if you don't
Mhm.
want to do either one, draw a circle and flush mount the stuff yourself
Yeah.
and still build it.
Yeah.
You'll still have a great speaker.
Hmm. True. Now, how about, so now I'm gonna go a little bit weird.
Mhm.
Bear with me. Could you do, like, so imagine, like, what would it be? What would it take, and how ridiculous would this be? And this is just me being weird. Don't take it as anything other than that. But if you were to take that speaker right there that you're leaning on, kind of maybe either flip it, like have another one where it's all one giant speaker, so it'd be like essentially two 15-inch woofs, two, like, how would that
So
work? Would that be something that would even be worth doing, or
Rusk would answer this in that the comb filtering would be terrible. They're
okay,
asking, what about adding a second woofer and a second horn? It sounds like shit.
it sounds like shit, and not like the amplifier.
No, like no, it sound absolutely terrible.
Okay,
Now, I
what about
I mean,
just
look,
one more woofer?
so the double basement idea has been done and people love it, but you have to understand that the woofer needs approximately 4 cubic feet of volume,
Mhm.
which means to add another woofer means
You're
to
adding a
add,
lot of space.
yes, sir. There's no getting around the physics of it.
But I like space magic, so.
I hear you. Um, so the idea just simply is that,
Like
we have
size. Oh, go ahead.
tried to make it as small as possible while still getting maximum performance.
Which I love that. I think that's really cool. Honestly, like I was contemplating buying these from you, and I showed my wife, and she's like,
One of my very close family friends, I mean, like
hmm,
a really guy that does my photography, super
hmm,
nice man. Gonna go to the river with him next week. I was like, look, man, Tim, I will give these to you. And I brought his wife in. She loved how they sounded. That Betsy is, she was my wife's best friend,
hmm.
or is my wife's best friend, right? And then he took it over to their house, and she's like, "Yeah, I can't do it, man."
Yeah,
Even with them being given to for free, he
yeah.
couldn't sign. He couldn't get her to green light him.
Wow. Yeah, like I could probably get them in the house and be like, "Oh yeah, these are for review," and then just see how long it lasts before she's like, "So when are those?"
Right, but if you wanted if you need it smaller, you buy a Forte. But
Hmm.
then the Forte matters where you put it in relation to the back wall.
Hmm.
But if you wanted a Cornwall, the nice thing about this idea is that you if you look at like many other kits on many other websites,
Mhm.
they tell you you have to use this driver and this driver and this driver.
Yeah.
Now, I'm suggesting, yes, you should use this horn, but I can tell you where to get this horn so cheaply it doesn't
Doesn't
matter.
matter. Yeah.
And you need a crossover that makes sense, but you can use whatever driver warms your heart.
Yeah.
And maybe not whatever driver, but there are at least 8 to 10 drivers by 6 companies that are actual drop-in options.
Gotcha. Which I mean, fantastic. Like you have so many options when building these. It sounds like, and you can do so many
Yes.
different things. Now, so here's another quick question from my perspective. How how easy are these in rooms? Like, let's say you don't have the means to have them perfectly set up. Like, are these real easy for like room? Like, you just throw them in a room and just they sound good, or do you need to do
Yes.
some room correction? So,
No, you throw these in a room, they sound fantastic. Now in my living room, I have a massive suck out on one side that goes into a staircase and like the kitchen.
yeah, I'm
and-
saying they have huge open freaking stupid thing.
Right. The bass is somewhat uneven in that presentation, so I use the balance control and give it a slight tilt on the balance control.
Mhm.
But that's to be expected for there's no speaker where that wouldn't have been possible other than a speaker system that had so many woofers that they were compressing even the negative space of the suck out.
Just get a wall of subs on the side that's empty, and then go.
Right. Then it won't matter. Yeah, no, these are tremendously forgiving in placement, and they actually horns like to breathe.
Mhm.
And when we say that is that if you had a rectangle of a room, you're best served by down firing, firing at the length of the room rather than the width.
Yeah, makes sense. So they're and actually, in the limited experience that I've had with horn listening or what have you, speakers in general. Like I didn't really get into speakers too hard before my daughter was born, and then I switched to headphones because reasons. And but my experience with speakers has always been that horns. Whenever I had horns on scene or what have you, that they are a little more forgiving in that sense. Like they're easier to get along with generally.
I mean, I've only really had horn loaded systems. I've had other speaker systems, but like I'm a horn guy, and so I couldn't say if
There's
other
a joke
systems
there,
are
but I
more
won't go there. But yeah.
right. The question, which maybe you guys can answer, is: are horns more forgiving than box speakers with dynamic drivers? I'd say probably not, to be honest with you.
No.
Yeah,
No.
Russ's answer. Russ's
Yeah,
answer.
I heard he was
solid
like, no.
go.
Just no.
But again, remember, like, I think my analogy. I mean, and maybe Russ agrees or doesn't agree. It's like a gorilla. If you piss it off
Mhm.
or misuse it or don't respect it, it's going to hurt you.
Mhm.
These are very efficient, very loud speakers.
Yeah.
Louder than any box speaker you know of can get to.
Fair.
So
So
a
you're saying my
3-year-old and a volume
metas.
knob are a bad idea.
So you're saying my metas can't keep up? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying 10 of your metas couldn't keep up.
Are you shaming me right now in my speaker game?
No, your metas are a fantastic. Wait. Your metas are a fantastic speaker, honest to God. And
Yeah,
anybody
no,
who
I think
owns a
that's
pair
great.
of metas, anybody who owns an LS50 should get the sub.
Yeah, I need
That
to
is
get
a
sub.
fit.
Mhm.
It is a fantastic, fully fledged, complete idea.
Mhm.
But never believe that your little 5 1/4 inch woofer is going to keep up with
Yeah.
a 15-inch pro woofer and a 18-inch wide horn.
Yeah, it's not. I 100% agree with you. Like I've I've been in rooms where you're like, yeah.
Right, but that's not, most people, a meta, an LS50 and a sub is all you actually need.
Yeah.
Now this is this, but you can't build an LS50.
Mhm.
There's no version there's no way to build anything comparable to an LS50.
Yeah,
Like
there's no way.
I'll tell you,
crazy stuff going on there.
If you want a DIY kit that's super interesting, that's like an LS50 as far as size, go to Parts Express and buy the Overnight Sensation.
Oh,
Or go to DIYspeaker.com, the DIYspeaker.com or DIYspeakergroup.com, and there's a speaker called the MTM, the same guy, Paul Gandy, who designed the Overnight Sensation, which has a 4-inch magnesium woofer
mm-hmm.
and a 3/4-inch tweeter, does 2 woofers in 1 tweeter.
Oh wow. Well,
And that's a giant killer of a micro monitor.
Which those are
And
badass.
you can buy that kit for $300.
That's pretty nuts. That's pretty nuts.
But do I think that still yields the same sound stage with the same proportionate sound pressure force or decay pattern as a big driver, big cabinet speaker? No, I don't.
So, and then here's 2 more questions, and I meant to ask you these earlier, but
can we make it 4 and then we should just sort of wrap it up, because I don't want to.
Yeah.
I'm happy to answer other questions, but
no. Well, I have 2 right now. So from the
cool.
So Ashley Watson asks, "What's the crossover point for the woofer?" And then a follow up from her would be, or her. Sorry, I'm assuming, shouldn't assume. From them is, so does the higher or lower order crossovers sound better at low levels? So 2 questions.
Low order filters sound better at low volume to moderate volume. Higher order filters sound better at moderate to high volume.
Okay. And then the crossover point in these?
So the crossover point in these is 500 hertz.
500 hertz.
Now, it's a 12 dB filter.
Mm-hmm.
So someone could look it up and see what that actually means. The reason why you don't use a 6 dB filter, a 6 dB filter would be just a cap, correct? Where a 12 dB is a cap and an inductor, typically. Okay. If it was a 6 dB filter, which a lot of speakers use, and they say it has a very natural sound.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is that it won't have the coherent. You have two such large drivers that can create such large sound stages that you need them to have more overlap on each other to speak with more to present a sound that is more becoming of a unified voice. So that if you did a acoustic crossover at 6 dB, they might sound more muddied
Mm-hmm.
and like doubly present. And so by having them overlap ever so slightly, where they're both throttled, they're both rolling off like this,
Mm-hmm.
they're gonna have a more coherent sound.
Fair.
Now, again, the crossover point is principally dictated by what this woofer can go up to 1200 hertz
Mm-hmm.
easily. So this woofer goes from 40 hertz is where I tuned it to 1200 hertz, no problem. Okay. Oh. Which one's faster? This 2-inch diaphragm or this 15?
2-inch diaphragm.
Right. So if I want my speaker to sound fast and dynamic, wouldn't I want this sucker to take over as quickly as possible?
Yeah.
This one can only go down to 500 hertz before it blows up.
But that's
right?
Fun.
$85 in 5 minutes, you'll have this up and running again.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, these 3 screws, it comes off. It has a self-keyed diaphragm, and you're up and running. This is a pro-level product.
So you just quick and easy replacements and fun to go. Yeah, or fun to go.
Yes,
good to go.
This woofer is rated to take 400 watts continuously, 800 watt peaks.
That's impressive.
This driver is, I think, rated to take either 50 or 100 watts continuously.
Wow.
It is likely in my system, in an average like 35 watt stereo system, this driver is likely never to see more than a watt. Can take 50 watts, we're never going to see more than a watt.
Yeah.
Because think about it, 1 watt with this is 109 dB.
Which is like, what? Yeah. At what point are you? It's just like, some of this stuff is insanity. you would never listen at those levels. It's
but you're never going to blow that diaphragm, thank
Yeah.
God.
yeah, exactly. Freaking tanks.
But so your choice of the crossover point is dictated by what this can do.
Hmm.
And I mean, you go on Parts Express and the drivers are essentially $300 depending on who you're choosing. But you're going to have it for 20 years. Like, you should be buying this with the idea that you're going to have it for a really long time.
Yeah. These aren't going anywhere.
And
You have these for a long time.
right, and you're never going to blow them up.
Hmm.
And the delta
Your kids
between
are never going to blow them up.
right now, if this was at a 1.4-inch driver, most 1.4-inch drivers only go down to 800 hertz.
Mhm.
So, like Al's crossover is called an AP12, meaning 12 dB filter, 500.
Mhm.
He makes an AP12 800, and so if I bought a shittier, less good 1.4-inch driver,
Mhm.
I'd get an AP12 800 because that's what the driver could do.
Okay.
But if you're thoughtful in your choice and buy either the Radian or the Fatale driver, it'll go down to 500 hertz all day long. Actually goes down to 400 hertz. And so by running it at 500 hertz, you never blow it up.
Which, yeah, done. Easy
Right.
peasy.
So that's the crossover point is dictated by what your driver can handle and what your horn can handle.
And you meet them.
Yep.
And then, so I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat, but so I had a couple questions that I've been seeing a lot of people buying. They had that sale over the weekend or 4th of July. The Zoo.
You mean like
Weekends.
I have right here?
Yeah. So that's the Soul Supreme. I remember I asked that question earlier. So I had a question. What are your thoughts, not against the Soul Supreme, but this versus the Dirty Weekends that everyone's buying right now?
I've owned the Omens,
Mhm.
which the Dirty Weekend is based off of, and they were a fantastically good speaker.
Mhm.
They are a fantastically good speaker. I think that having a bigger horn, because they still have an acoustic lens,
Mhm.
another word for horn, having a bigger horn can lend itself to a bigger soundstage.
Yeah.
Now,
sense.
Zoo doesn't hide this, but I don't think most people understand that they're using a compression driver just like this
Mhm.
in their. This speaker, why I chose it, uses a Radian 850 driver, which is, the only thing better than an 850 is the 950. The 850 is a monster of a driver.
Mhm.
And oh, by the way, whenever I really decide to get crazy, I'm going to swap in the beryllium diaphragm into my Zoo.
Oh wow. Which that should be an easy thing to do, correct? Like
It is 100%.
Hmm.
So I think the Dirty Weekend is a fantastically good speaker. It is still a smaller. It is a very is like it's the thing I suggest to everybody. If you've seen
Mhm.
my comments on Discord or in posting, I think the Dirty Weekend is the best value in audio.
Okay.
And pair is like one of the best pairings with my amps.
There you go.
But it's a 10-inch woofer,
Mhm.
and it is a simpler order filter. So in the simpler order filter, it's great at low volumes. It has really good bass proportionate to its size. It is the most domestically friendly size-wise, in my opinion, because it's 12 inches by 12 inches
Yeah.
tall. But I love big horns,
And you cannot lie.
right?
You other
100%.
speaker guys cannot deny.
Now, if I had a set of Dirty Weekends, the one thing that everybody who has a set of Dirty Weekends should do is 1 year later,
Mhm.
you should get the submissions.
Hmm.
Their
As like
sub
as a scale.
no, it's the sub that it's a
Yes,
separate sub.
As you scale up in your
Yeah,
in your
I
system.
don't know that I would go up in there. If I had a Dirty Weekend, would I swap it out for the Soul Supreme? No, I'd add the sub. Their subs are insanely good, super awesome, badass things.
Mhm.
They're not an off the shelf idea.
Mhm.
Like it's a uniquely executed idea.
So, okay, and with these ones, but your Cornscalas, you wouldn't need a sub.
Nope.
These are just boom and go, literally.
No sub needed.
Mhm. I mean,
You told me I was gonna do like 2 little interludes and play songs,
uh-huh.
but I don't want us to get banned off of.
Well, just get taken down potentially. So.
Yeah,
Or they delete those sections or whatever.
Right. No copyright infringement by
Mhm.
playing music, but these have really proportionate, truthful bass. You know, where you don't feel the need for a sub, where you feel like maybe a sub is even present.
Yeah, it's already. I mean, it's a 15-inch freaking woofer. I mean, cheese and rice.
Right.
That's
So
it's a beast.
when this starts going, you have the ability to overload your room without
Mhm.
issue.
Fair.
Not every speaker can overload a room, but
Yeah.
when I say overload a room, what I mean is if you play music loud enough and you touch your drywall and you can feel the rhythm of the music on your drywall, you're playing the music so loud, too loud,
Yeah.
such that the room is now a resonator for your
speakers.
music.
Yeah.
At which point you're actually not playing music, you're just
You're vibrating everything to death.
right.
All your drywall screw or nails are coming out.
No, I mean, like I have done it more times than I can count. I mean, I'm guilty of it just as much as anybody else. But these will compress a room.
Mm-hmm.
Not every speaker can.
Fair enough. And then, so final sleepy ass final question. We'll call it final question. We're at 2 hours now. How long did it take you to build? And then, what would be your estimated time frame for like an average person building these?
I didn't build these. I had a cabinet maker build these per my request.
Mm-hmm.
It took him 2 weeks. Well, like he builds other cabinets. He builds all my boxes.
Yeah, I'm sure it'd take him probably hours if he just did it.
Right, but if you were cutting your own wood and assembling this is going to be 6 hours of cabinet construction.
Mm-hmm.
And I would assume, truth be told, you have between 6 and 10 hours of assembly. But that's because you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Like I know what I'm doing, and it still takes me 6 hours, but I'm like anal retentive, fastidious with everything. Like if we open this up, you'd see that there's a 3M adhesive, sticky pads at right angles. Because I create a wire loom for the inside of the cabinet, and they're not just stuck there. I actually then take a drop of Gorilla Glue on the back side so the adhesive gets it started. The Gorilla Glue makes it permanent. And then I take a 1/4 inch screw through the center of the sticky pad because it's never going to leave. It's not allowed to.
This is your home now.
Right. And everything's zip tied into exactly where it's supposed to be.
Fair.
You've seen how we build our amps. It's not different for the speakers. Yeah. It's just a different, different implementation.
Yeah. Same quality, different thing.
Yeah.
It's like growing an orange and an apple, but at the same quality level.
Yep.
Fair enough. Man, now I want more speakers. I'm not gonna lie to you.
This can come home to you. It's already built.
I might. We'll see. I'll have to. Maybe I can sneak it in under the wife's attention, and she won't notice these honking things wherever I decide I can place them.
Well, here's the last thing to be said. What's cool about this speaker is, on one hand, like Nora Jones's voice sounds completely correct, but so does an 808.
Oh yeah.
So there we are.
and there it is.
Right.
But these things are. I'm excited for. I don't know, just speakers in general lately. I've been really digging on them. So, maybe I'll have to see about if I can sneak those in. I'll talk to the wife some more about it, maybe, and see.
Everything's a barter.
Everything is a barter, except my wife's a lawyer, so I don't usually win my barters.
For sure.
But anyways, Justin, thank you so much for coming on and doing this and kind of explaining the process and the parts, and then I'll get all of these the PDFs PDF I have. I'll share it on the Discords that we're in. I'll see about if I can post it into the description here. If not, I'll ping me on either if you're on Discord or on here, and I can get it to you anyway, which way or sideways. I'll get onto the headphones forum probably and see about doing it there as well. Heck, maybe we can do like a speaker DIY speaker thread or something.
That'd be awesome, because I mean, there's some really great kits out there, not just this.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So maybe I'll do that too then. And then. Yeah, I think, and then I'll get all the websites and everything like that. I'll get that in the description. So later on, so if you guys have any questions, or I want to know where to get all this stuff, I'll have the list of websites in there. I meant to do it today, but I had the daughter all day, and so my day went sideways, as day with a 4-year-old does.
Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, dude, my pleasure. Thank you for jumping on with me and explaining these beautiful speakers you have. So, yeah, so with that, Justin, I'll let you, anything you want to say before we hang out, or hang out before we hang up and roll out?
I hope you guys will come to Rocky Mountain. We're going to Can Jam SoCal or Rocky Mountain. Come say hi.
Yes, most definitely. All right. Well, hey, everyone, thank you for joining. And Justin, fantastic as always. Also, Amps and Sound, if you didn't know, that's this man's wonderful love project. And love business. Fantastic amps. So check those out if you're interested in an amp. And he's super friendly and very, very open to chatting with you. So hit him up if you have questions. And with that, everyone have a great weekend. Justin, enjoy your weekend as well. And we'll chat later. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
All right. Cheers.